Can people in the back hear me okay? Okay. So my name is Caitlin Scott, and I am a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Environment, and I am working with the Student Success Office for the next 8 months, working on sharing some of these study skills with students across the Faculty of Environment. So today I'll introduce you to some tips to help you get the most out of your class time. And this will include what to do before lecture, during your lecture, and after your lecture. And then we're going to practice some of these skills in a condensed lecture of ENV 178, which is a class that most of you, if not all of you, will have to take in your first year. And ENV 178 is a statistics class where you'll learn Excel skills, which are really great skills to have in the workforce and great things to put on your resume later. But we know that some students tend to find this content a little bit challenging, and so hopefully what we go through today will help you to make the most of your time in that class and to manage your time well throughout the fall semester to do well in all of your courses. So starting with before your lectures, what you do before your lecture impacts what you can do and learn in your lecture, and that also impacts what you can remember and do after your lecture. So preparing beforehand will improve your efficiency and your comprehension during your lecture time. So there's a few things that you can do to help you prepare for your lecture. How many of you guys did your readings before class in high school? Not too many of you. Something to work on, because reading ahead of time will help you to identify the sequence, the main points, the terminology, and give you the ability to follow along a lot more effectively during your class time. Most of you probably didn't have lecture slides ahead of time in your high school classes, but this is something that's pretty common practice in university. They'll be posted to Learn, which is an online course website that you'll have, and professors will put their lecture slides up a few days or just the day of. And taking the time to go through those lecture slides will give you an idea of where the class is going and help you to be more engaged and organized with your note-taking during your class time. Similarly, taking a quick glance at your notes from your previous class can help you to make connections between the two classes and to help you review beforehand to improve your efficiency when you're in class. A lot of professors will spend a bit of time recapping at the beginning of class, but it's a good idea to take the initiative to do it on your own. And then finally, plan to attend all of your classes. This is the most important thing. I can't stress this enough. During my undergrad, I went to most of my classes, if not every single one, because I'm really cool like that. And it really makes a big difference in how well you can do in your classes. And your professors are not going to notice if you're not there. They're not going to follow up. And it's going to be on you to make sure that you get all that material and to make sure that you're not missing anything. But importantly, during class time, that's when the professors are making important connections. Oh. Hello, oh, no. Oh, I know why that happened. This got moved. Sorry. It's back up on my screen, but let's hope the... Hopefully most of your professors are a little bit more technically inclined than I am. And now we're way ahead on our thing. Okay, sorry. So importantly, connections are made in your lectures between the content that you're reading outside of class and what you're learning in class. And I found that examples that really helped me understand the problems that we were discussing in class were really helpful for my learning. So one of the first things we said on that last slide was to read before class, but a lot of students might find that you have a ton of reading to do, it's overwhelming, how can you possibly get through all of it? So SQ3R is a proven technique to help you to get through your reading in a more effective and efficient way. And it starts with surveying. So this is where you'll skim through the chapter and take note of the key headings, subheadings, the bolded definitions, and review images. Often in textbooks, there will be a summary at the end of the chapter, so you can review that summary. If you're assigned a journal article, there'll be an abstract, which will give you a good idea of what's going to be in there. And the big thing here is to try to anticipate what the author is going to say throughout. And so you're looking at those subheadings and what kind of information might be in this section of what I'm reading. The question, the Q stands for question, sorry, and this is where, as you're going through, you can change your headings into questions. So instead of what are the, basic concepts of probability, you'll pose the question, what are the basic concepts of probability? And then later when you're reading through, you can ask those questions to yourself. And we'll get to note-taking in a minute, but a good idea is to take a piece of paper, or you can set up 2 columns in your note-taking if you're doing it on a computer, and put the questions on one side, and then as you go through, you can fill in the notes that are answering those questions with further explanation and examples, etc. So the first R in the SQ3R is to read, obviously. So as you go through your reading, you're answering those questions and taking notes of key information that might go along with those explanations. Then you're on to recall, which is where you force yourself to think about what are the key points from what I'm reading after you've just read it. And you can also go back to your questions and force yourself, what is the answer to this question, without looking at your notes as you go through. And the most important thing is that you should spend more time on recall than on reading, because this is where you're going to really get that information into your mind, and it'll help you prepare for your exams when it comes time to study. And then the last R is review. So when you're recalling, you can identify, oh, I'm not really sure of what the answer is to that, or I'm not 100% sure what the key points were under that section. And you can figure out why you missed it and where you might need some more information and go back and fix that in your notes at that time. And also at review time, you can reorganize your notes to make them easier to go back to later. So you might want to create a mind map. This is great in environment because we are dealing with lots of complex problems with lots of moving parts. Or you could make a chart where you have different columns and fill out the information. And so this is great because then when it comes back to study time, you have this usable information that's really easy to read and understand. It also forces you to check your understanding and points out the areas where you're still struggling to understand. And then finally, it forces you to make connections between the material that you're reading. So then, going over everything that we've talked about, now that you've reviewed your assigned reading, you've reviewed your lecture notes, and you've reviewed your previous notes, you can ask yourself questions like, can you make connections between the different parts that you've reviewed? Do you have any questions still that you're not understanding? Or how does the reading align or connect to my upcoming lecture of what I've seen from the lecture slides? And these are really great questions to have in your mind when you're going into class, because it allows you to figure out where you really need to focus in class and where you need to fill in those gaps. And also, if you have questions, you can bring those to class and ask the professor then, because likely if you have them, many of your fellow colleagues have them. So during the class, there's a few important things to do. First of all, obviously attend your class. We've gone over that again. And you want to listen, participate, and take notes in class. And then there are a few things. So first, it's important to have a good attitude going into your classes. You're all excited to be here. And so having a good attitude about the content, the lecture, and the class will really help you to get the most out of your class, and will help you stay engaged and focused. And whereas if you have a bad attitude and you're feeling negatively, it'll hinder your ability to really listen and understand the content. Choosing your seat wisely is the first thing to do once you get to class. Choosing where you sit in the lecture can have a really big impact on your ability to stay focused. And whether or not you sit in the front or the back, just take note of if that's working for you and adjust it as the semester goes on, because you want to make sure that you're avoiding distractions. The next thing is that you can only listen in spurts. So obviously, you're going to come to class and you're going to try and pay 100% attention the entire time. That's really hard for our brains to do. So doing all that prep work ahead of time allows you to have those questions ready, have those areas identified that you're not as comfortable with so that you can really focus in and engage on those parts. The third point is that you do not listen well when you're doing something else. This is something that I sort of believed before, that I could multitask, not necessarily in class, but in my life in general. But tons of studies have shown that multitasking is not really a thing. We don't do it as well as we think we do it. And so when you come to class, make sure that that is the thing that you are doing, is coming to class. And so you want to turn off all the notifications on your phone. You could even turn it off, put it away, and not have it out. Close down any other browsers or any other programs open on your computer. Don't talk to your neighbor. And all of this will help you to stay engaged during class. And then the final thing is that you listen better when you're actively engaged. So if you're paying attention to what is being said and you're actively processing it, you are going to have better recall after the lecture. So you're going to be able to study more effectively and know the material the first time through. So what is the difference between active and passive listening? Passive listening is hearing what the professor is saying and copying it all down. And active listening is carrying on a conversation with the professor in your head. And so doing that prep ahead of time will really help you to listen actively throughout the class and not just be writing down every single thing that the professor says, but instead paying attention and writing down the things that are going to add to your notes, because you know what's in the lecture notes already, you know what's in the textbook, so you can add those examples in and make those connections where you're missing them. And then there are some strategies that you can also use to help you stay focused and determine what you should write down during the class. So try to anticipate what your professor is going to say on a given topic. That prep ahead of time, again, is going to help you with this. Watch for verbal cues like first, second. That'll show that there's an important sequence of points that the professor is going to make. Or if they say something like note that, that's usually a sign that you should note that. Listen for repetition of key phrases and terms. That usually means they're important. Watch the professor's body language, so their facial expressions, their facial expressions or voice can indicate the topic is important. And then finally, the amount of time that they're spending on a topic will usually indicate how important it is. And then lastly, if they take the time to write it on the board, that usually also means it's important. So when you get to class, you are going to take notes. So many of you have learned the outline method, which is where you use headings and bullets and subheadings to organize your notes, and that's pretty typical of high school. That's what I did in high school and even into my undergrad, because I didn't know about this method. So there's a method of note-taking called the Cornell method, and it was developed at Cornell University by a professor in the 1950s, and he had this idea that you should create 3 sections. So the first section is where you take notes. So you record the most important information from the lecture here, the key points, the terms, and facts and examples. And then you have keywords in the column along the left side of your page. And here, as you're going through, you're going to note key concepts, but you can also use it to put questions in, and then you'll have those for later. And then at the end of class, you're going to do a little summary. So during the lecture, you write your notes. You might take a few key notes down. Right after class, you'll take those notes and use the left-hand column to put some keywords in related to those segments or lines, and write a little summary of what were the main points from the day. So we're going to try this now. We've got Dr. Leah Miniker, who's going to do a condensed ENVS lecture. And then afterwards, we're going to come back and take up those notes. So make sure you're taking good notes. Here. Oh, right, yeah. You need this.
Yes, apparently I do.
It's a hard classroom to really make your voice carry.
Yeah, I think in because of the recording, they want
It's really difficult to organize paper notes in that sense.
That's a preview. Just wait, I have one more. Dun. Oops. What the what?
You have other stuff after the
Huh? Oops. Oh, that's the problem. Yeah, sorry.
We should have
Okay.
8 days ago, the people.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. Can you guys hear me? That's maybe because my head was just down. It's okay? Okay. So, my name is Leah Miniker. I'm in the School of Planning. And I teach Environment 178 in the winter term. So Environment 178 is often, people just call it stats, even though there's a different name in the course outline. So first of all, I'm curious, who has taken data management? Okay, and who has not taken data management? Okay, so it looks to me about half and half. If you have taken data management, this course will be mostly review for you, which is maybe not good if you're like, no. But if you have taken it, then a lot of the concepts will be the same as what we learn in Environment 178. If you have not taken data management, that's also totally okay, and it doesn't mean that you're going to find it challenging or difficult or you're going to fail. It just means that it might not be as familiar to you. So this is sort of the mock lecture, but I also want to take the opportunity to welcome you to the Faculty of Environment. I think it's a fantastic faculty, and I'm really happy to be here. And I hope that you guys all enjoy your time here with us as well. Do you know yet, if you know your schedules now, right? So who's taking Environment 178 in the fall term? Okay, and who's taking in the winter? Okay, so fewer of you guys are taking in the winter, so I'll be your professor in the winter. There's a different professor in the fall term. So this preamble is actually true for all of your university classes. The syllabus is like this amazing document that professors spend a lot of work on, trying to anticipate their students' questions, to write them in the syllabus, so that if you have questions that come up in your brains, you can go check the syllabus, and they're probably there. If it's anything about deadlines, what is this worth? What happens if it's late? How many % are deducted per day? What are the policies about if I'm sick, or if my parents split up, or if someone dies in my family? Like, what are those policies? Who do I talk to? How do I go for counseling if I'm struggling with anxiety or depression? Like, those things are actually in your syllabus. So take a look at your syllabus before you ask questions. Read the syllabus, because professors do actually spend a lot of time thinking about how to make it clear and explicit, especially in first year when everybody knows that you're coming from high school and that you haven't been here before. So we're trying to make the transition easy. Okay. Expectations. So you can expect from your professors that they will be prepared for class, that they will be on time to class, that they will try to make, hopefully, most of your professors, and in the faculty environment, most of the professors I know try to make the lectures engaging. They try not to just talk at you the whole time. They show you mixed media. They try to do smaller group work so that you can integrate your learning into integrate different learning styles. You can expect that they will do what they say that they're going to do. You can also expect, because classes are a lot bigger, so for Environment 178, for example, in the winter term, when I taught it, there were 320 students, which is a big class. And I would love, like probably most of your high school teachers knew your name by the end of the year, right? Most of them? So in a class of 320 students, professors can't get to know everyone. And so if you come to office hours, that's one way of your professors getting to know you. But so that's a big, I think probably a big difference. You have TAs in a lot of your classes. You'll have TAs, which are teaching assistants, which are usually graduate students, sometimes undergraduate students who are further ahead than you, who have taken the course and done really well in it. So for Environment 178, you'll have undergrad and graduate TAs, and you'll do tutorials, and you'll have different people that you can talk to about getting help if you need it. So their expectations would be that they would be there for office hours, they would respond to your emails, they would respond to your questions on Learn that you post in the discussion board, and then anything else that's in the syllabus in terms of your expectations of them. For students, your expectation, and I've heard it already, is that you come to class, though in a class of 320, I have no idea who's not in class. And so if you choose not to come to class, that's totally up to you. You don't actually have to come to class. No one's going to know for most of your undergrad, for most of your first year classes. And there will be days where you're not feeling up to it, you've been out too late the night before, or whatever it is, and you don't come. But the important thing is to just recognize that if you choose not to come, probably your grades will reflect your attendance. So if you're willing to own getting bad grades because you're not coming to class, you can do that. And no one, your parents, your professors, your TAs, that it's totally your decision. So you know that if you come and you engage, you'll do better, you'll get more opportunities for scholarships, you'll get more opportunities to get to know your professors and whatever, have success in your undergrad's career. But I think probably the biggest difference between high school and university, there's lots of them, but one of the big differences is that in university, you're actually treated as adults. And I know they try to get there with high school, but in a lot of high schools I know you can't fail things, or you can, right, is this true? That you can hand something in on like June 20th and they still mark it. And here, if you're like more than 5 days late, in a lot of the courses, it's just like, oh, so you're done. Like you actually get 0 for this thing. If you don't show up to the midterm with no documentation, you get 0, you could fail, and there's nothing you can do about that. It's just what it is. And so I think a lot of it is about, in first year, it's about learning how to take ownership of all these decisions that is your choice to make. There's also a lot of emphasis here now on mental health. And that is something I think a lot of people leaving home for the first time who struggle with mental health issues. There's a lot of counseling services available and accessible, and you can talk to your professors or your TAs or look on the website for those kinds of things. And then there's accessibility options as well. So if that's part of your experience, then you can also deal with that. But it's up to you to seek help for that. Okay. Classes attendance, I already talked about that. Any questions about any of the expectations or differences or any fears or concerns or excitement or anything that you have about moving to university? Yes, Ethan.
Are marking schemes generally consistent along most professors?
So the question is, are marking schemes generally consistent among most professors? So what do you mean by marking schemes? Do you mean like the proportion of grades?
Yeah.
No. So in Environment 178, we have 3 assignments that are worth 10% each. We have a midterm that's worth maybe like 25 or 30%, a final that's worth 35 or 40%. There's also attendance in tutorials, which in most of your classes there will not be attendance grades. But again, in first year, we try to incentivize your attendance by giving you marks if you come. Yeah, but it's totally up to the course, but all the marks are on the syllabus. And so it'll be like, this is assignment 1, this is the description, this is how many marks it is worth, this is how you get good marks on it, this is when it's due. And then, but it'll be different for every class. Yeah. Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, if you can't come to a lecture, are they recorded and posted somewhere?
So the question is, if you can't come to a lecture, are they recorded and posted somewhere? This also depends on your professor. I would say mostly not. They're mostly not recorded. If you miss a class, then you need to talk to the lecture material is often, like the vast majority of the time, posted online. But if you miss a class, it's your responsibility to talk to your fellow students to find out what you missed and either copy their notes or figure out how you can miss it. Professors will typically not sit with you in office hours to explain to you what they taught on Tuesday if you had to miss Tuesday class. They'll say, you go find a friend in your class and switch notes with them. And so often on the first day of class, you can like meet a buddy or someone you're living with in residence and say like, hey, if I miss anything because I'm sick or whatever, can we switch notes and we'll just be each other's like friend in class who you share notes with kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. What mark is considered to be a good mark in university? That depends on your program. So in planning, you need to maintain an overall average of 75 currently, or you can get let go from the program and moved into a different program. But it depends on what like program you're in and what you want. Like so, like great marks that would get you scholarships might be in the 90s, but it also depends on the scholarship and it depends on whether they want you to have extracurriculars and like, so it really depends. But I think on average, people's marks go down in high school, or from high school to university, you can expect that your marks will go down, typically. And that's okay. It's okay. It's just first year. Yeah? Can you have access to past exams? That is a great question. And that also probably will depend on the professor. So my suggestion for that would be ask the professor if there's any examples of past exams that can be used. If you use an exam without the professor's permission from a previous year, that can be considered cheating. And then there's serious repercussions with that. And you'll probably have a talk about academic integrity to that. It's like, don't do it. Because you can fail, you can get kicked out of university. Like, just if you do this stuff that you're hearing about, preparing in advance, going to class, you won't need to do it. But it's, again, like pretty serious, pretty serious. Okay, any other questions? Yes? Can you sit in on classes that are not on your schedule? So if it's a giant class like this where no one would notice, probably yes. But it's probably also a good idea if you want to sit in on a class that you're not in to just chat with the professor beforehand. I think most people would not object to that, unless it's maybe like a 5-person class and they want to. I don't know a scenario in which someone would say, no, you can't come. Like I wouldn't care if you wanted to come talk about stats for 2 hours with me. Like, you can come if you're not in a class. I don't know why you would want to, but you could. Okay. Any other questions before I continue? Okay. So this is Environment 178, Introduction to Environmental Research Methods, also called STATS. Introduction to methods of, and this is the course description. Intro to methods of collecting, evaluating, and using evidence in environmental studies. Descriptive statistics, so these are measures of center, variation, and shape of the distribution, measures of association between two variables, and probability theory as it relates to inferential statistics. And then we develop skills in using spreadsheets in Excel for data and analysis, displayed analysis, and then the prerequisite is just that it's not open to math students. This you do not have to write down because you will get this on the syllabus when you take it. So the objectives for this course fall into 3 broad thematic areas. First, to verify knowledge of your basic math skills and to develop quantitative aptitude, which basically just means we don't expect, like, you know that data management was not a prerequisite for coming into this program, into the program that you're in. But also, by the end of your degree here, we want you to know enough math so that you can make sense of the world when you hear things about a research study that's come out, when you hear people claiming different things about science, that you're able to sort of look at the data and go, or look at the research and go, this is, you know, questionable because of this or that. So the other thing is to provide an introduction to statistical techniques used to describe data, again, just so that you're an informed citizen of the world. And then to provide a foundation for learning more about inferential stats in future courses. So some, depending on your program, you will be required or not to take more stats courses after this. Not sure if 278 is required for everybody or just some people. But that's the next stats course in second year. We also do data management and visualization. So part of the point of Environment 178 is to provide you with tangible skills in data management and visualization so you can put it on your resume when you're applying for jobs in co-op, if you're in co-op. Because it's a technical skill to be able to say, I can use Microsoft Excel and these are the things that I could do for your company or your office if I get hired here. So that's part of it as well, is that it's actually, we want to teach you some hands-on skills, not just the theory. So we use Excel, and then graphing and other data visualization techniques. And then finally, to talk about research design, sampling strategies, and data collection so that the things that you go out and say in the world are actually grounded in the data that you collect, and it's collected in a rigorous way. So why do we need to study scholarships? First of all, part of it is because a lot of how we understand the world today is based on our understanding of statistics and quantitative data. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that it can inform your choice of major if that is something that switches. It can provide opportunities for you to take different classes in your future. Surviving in the 21st century, again, there's everywhere you look, there are different scientific studies and different evidence being discussed, and often very contentious policy issues where different experts are relying on different sets of data or different interpretations of data that can severely influence our world, our environment, our health. And data should, we think, as academics, as people in a university setting, data should inform how we make our policies, which is this last piece here. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this evidence-based policy in practice. We want to make sense of the patterns that we observe in the world, and statistics help us to do that. So my first question for you is, how do you use data in your own life to make decisions? Yes?
Like anything you need to buy something, you need to think about if you have money and stuff like that.
Okay, so if you want to buy something, you have to think about if you have money. That's information, yeah, that's data, yep. If you want to calculate risk factors for what? Okay, any event that you're going to do. So that's an interesting one. So how many people think about risk factors of their activities in a given day and what your probability of dying from doing something in a day would be? Is that something you think about? Do you are you putting your hand up because you do think about it? So you're like, my probability of getting in this car and getting struck, I don't actually think that. I'm like, I need to go somewhere. It's too far to walk, so I'm going to drive there. But making life decisions would be a thing that you could think about. Or doing something really risky, you could actually look into data on how many people die from bungee jumping or whitewater rafting or whatever a dangerous thing might be. Yes? Okay. Okay, so gambling. I think that probably most people who buy lottery tickets don't actually think about the probability, because if they did, then they wouldn't buy one. But maybe. Yeah. Yes. Okay, getting dressed in the morning depending on the data about weather conditions and probability of rain, for example. Yeah, great.
Well, if you're going out to eat, where you're going to eat, because statistically speaking, more like people from Asia are lactose intolerant. So even if you don't know if your friends are lactose intolerant, you wouldn't want to get ice cream or something.
Okay, so making decisions about what to eat, depending on what you know about lactose intolerance or food allergies or those kinds of things. I think a lot of nutrition information in general, that's data, and people eat depending on whether they think something's healthy or not. Excellent. So yes, go ahead and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Travel, so like if you're new to traveling places, you can see which airline some people pick, statistically, or which country is the happiest place to go, like Sweden is the happiest country to go.
Yeah, so making decisions about where to go for traveling, enjoying like vacations and or safety or wet climate or whatever that might be. Excellent. Okay. What are some examples of recent policies that have relied specifically on data that you are aware of, either provincially, federally, municipally, within your schools, whatever? Yeah.
Reducing the emission of carbon gas and carbon pollution because of the ocean layer.
So sorry, say that again.
Reducing the emission of carbon monoxide and carbon gases
Yep.
because of the emission ozone layer.
Yep, so reducing carbon emissions, that's a big policy issue right now. Yep.
Going forward, like got rid of the carbon tax, and Justin Trudeau is doing something with the oil pipeline business, approving it. So those are policies for the environment.
Yes, so there's environmental data that may be used or ignored in policy discussions. So yeah.
Legalization of marijuana.
Legalization of marijuana is a policy issue, totally, obviously, and based on data, and super contentious, right? There's people on both sides who are like, don't legalize it because then everyone's going to be smoking it, and then there's the other people who are like, everyone's already smoking it, legalize it and make money and regulate it and make it safer. So yeah, you're right. And there's like different data that people rely on to deal with these contentious policy issues. So this is one person already mentioned this, Doug Ford, and I don't mean to pick on him. This is just easy because he's the new Ontario Premier, as you all know. So officially ending Ontario's cap and trade plan. So this is the video of him just talking about cap and trade.
You sent a clear message. You voted for a plan that respects you and respects your hard-earned money. You voted
You will, sorry, that's a topic you'll learn more about probably in your undergrad career about the data for cap and trade systems and carbon taxes. And so here's the like spoiler alert, that is not a policy decision that is based on good scientific evidence for reducing climate change or mitigating climate change. That's the spoiler alert. There's another thing though How many people, and so I do a lot of environment and health research. So I'm in school planning and I look at healthy cities and I look at sort of environmental determinants of health in urban environments mostly. And so this one, how many people have kept in touch or kept abreast of the safe injection sites policy? Kind of? Okay. So this is what, I'm going to show you, I want to show you this one because I think it's important.
Rehabilitation program. I've announced 1.9.
What did you just hear him saying about safe injection sites? How did he describe it? What words did he use? Yeah.
He's against it. He'd rather go into rehabilitation than making more safe injection sites.
Right. So he was saying, I've talked to people. I hear people who have other people in their lives addicted to drugs. And what he's doing is he's positioning, there's safe injection sites over here, what he called a place to do more drugs. They don't want a place to do more drugs. They want rehabilitation services, as if those two things are like totally opposite of each other, right? So for those of you who don't know, a safe injection site is a place that is exempted from the Federal Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, so you can go bring illegal drugs there, get clean needles, have nurses make sure that you don't overdose, and shoot up illegal drugs, and you don't go to jail for it. You can bring your own drugs, illegal drugs, into this place, and no one punishes you for that. Okay? So that's what a safe injection site is. Vancouver has North America's first safe injection site called Insight. They have studied the heck out of it because, as you can imagine, it's a very contentious issue where some people are like, heck no, I don't want my tax dollars going towards paying for drug addicts to go shoot up in a safe place and not go to jail for it. There's that narrative. And then there's the people who are like, oh, but there's already people who are addicted to drugs, and wouldn't it be better if instead of dying from hepatitis or HIV or overdosing, we give them a safe place to do the thing that they're already doing, except that they're not going to maybe get these infectious diseases or be dead on the sidewalk because they overdosed. And then the researchers came in and said, hey, I know, we could actually totally evaluate whether or not the outcomes that these people are talking about, the positive outcomes, happen, or whether the negative outcomes that these people are predicting happen. Whether or not kids are going to see that somehow society is promoting drug use and infectious disease rates go up and we lose money and those things. Okay, so there's been tons and tons and tons of research on safe injection sites. Here's one that talks about use of on-site detoxification services that are co-located with a supervised injection facility. So this was research that was done in Vancouver's Insight program, and they have Insight, which is the safe injection site. They also have On-site, which is right next door, and there's a door that goes in between them, and that is the rehab program. And so this study found that, in fact, people who use supervised injection facilities are more likely to go get rehab than people who don't use them. And the people who are living in closer proximity are more likely to use these services and be less likely to also die from an overdose. There's this cost saving. Is it cost saving? So is it actually cheaper to just pay for the injection site and like save the healthcare costs, or is it cheaper to just let everyone do the drugs and then throw them in jail, or treat their HIV or treat their Hep C or whatever? They save tons of money by having a safe injection site. So in terms of taxpayer money, lower expenditures if we have supervised injection sites. There's been a lot of other studies, and obviously now this is expanding across the country. So this article talks about all the lessons learned and how we might adapt it to different municipal contexts. But tons of studies have been done. Safe injection sites reduce overdose deaths like substantially. They reduce public disorder, which is like needles in the street, graffiti, other things that you don't want to be walking by if you're a neighborhood resident. They reduce infectious disease transmission, and it's cost effective. So some people in society don't feel good about it because it feels like immoral to them, but the evidence says if we want to protect society and improve public health, actually this is the thing we should be doing, even though it might make your tummy feel gross. There's other ways that statistics can be used as well, and this is from a website called Spurious Correlations. Probably lots of you have seen this, but this is like, these are highly correlated variables. The number of people who drown after falling out of a fishing boat is highly correlated, like very highly correlated with the marriage rate in Kentucky. Do these things actually have anything to do with each other? No, there's no reason why they would, but you can use data in a way that makes it look like two things are highly correlated, even though they're not really causally linked at all. Here's another one that I thought was interesting. Per capita cheese consumption is highly correlated with the number of people who die by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. Very high correlation. But it's not necessarily that if you eat more cheese, you become dead in your bed sheets. That's not a fair thing to think about. So in our stats class, we'll talk about how you need to think, like it's not the formulas and the numbers that give you the right answer. It's the thinking that goes into how you want to structure your analysis. It needs to make sense in your brain because you can use stats to sort of talk about how these things are correlated. Okay, so when you go into Environment 178, talk about what do we mean by data. So data are information coming from observations, counts, measurements, or responses. And describing data is the first step in answering your research question. So we'll talk about what is a research question and more about data in Environment 178. The way that we talk about data, especially if we're talking about one variable, is the shape, center, and spread. So here is a question for you. This is an activity. So these are hypothetical tree height distributions from 3 forests. And you can see here is like 60, that should be 60 to 70. And this is 140 to 150 for all of them. That's the same scale. And let's say it's feet high. So these are how tall the trees are in different forests. And one of these represents an untouched forest. One of them represents a forest after construction. And one of them represents a forest after a forest fire. So which one would you say would A be? Sorry, louder. Forest fire? How many people think that A is forest fire? Any other thoughts about A, what A might be? Sure, shout it out if you want. Untouched forest, okay. How many people think it's an untouched forest? And why do you think that? In the back, why do you think it would be untouched? Yes. Yes. So when we have a curve that goes like a bell shape, like this, a bell shape, often that's like, it hasn't been influenced by anything because a lot of variables in nature look like that. What would B be? So you have a lot of trees that are much taller and fewer trees that are shorter. Yeah?
I think these be forest fire because the trees aren't really tall and then after some time they grow. They're taller.
Okay. So B is like there's lots of tall trees and there's only a few tiny trees. So after a forest fire, what would you expect the forest to look like?
Oh, after like, I guess there's more shorter trees.
Yeah, so if everything burns down and then starts to regrow, you'd probably actually expect this one, right? Shorter trees and only a few tall ones that maybe survived the fire. So C is after a forest fire, and B is after construction, because they would have maybe tried to preserve the bigger trees and just cut down the smaller ones. Here's a hypothetical age distribution. The only reason that I wanted to show you this is because a lot of policy decisions are made based on our demographics. And so, for example, so what does this graph show, first of all? What can you see from this graph? This is like the number of people, or the proportion, I should say, proportion of people who are 0 to 10 years, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and upwards. Yes? Yep, there's lots of babies.
The young and older population are really high in comparison to those middle age and those who are super old.
Right, so the like very elderly people, there's not as many of them because people usually die before they're 90 or 100. But yeah, it looks like there's kind of some peaks. There's a lot of babies, not as many middle-aged people, and then a lot of people in their 60s and 70s, it looks like. So what kinds of decisions could like a provincial government make based on this data? Yeah?
Policies that would benefit the baby boomers, would be like the 80-year-olds, and policies that affect like younger generations like Gen Z and
Yep, so policies that would affect baby boomers, like what?
retirement.
Yep. So this kind of distribution could affect how people make decisions about retirement income or how you, yeah, that's a good one.
Maybe like increasing the wage for the middle class because there's a lot of dependents. So there's a lot of people that are retired or like babies. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of like pressure on the middle class in order to provide a lot more taxes.
Yep. So like anything related to the tax system where you have like fewer working people and lots of dependents on either end. Healthcare would be another example, right? Because as you age, you increasingly need healthcare services, and young kids also require a lot of healthcare services often. Yep. 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 Childcare policies could be influenced by this kind of age distribution. There's a lot of different things. I'm going to keep moving on in the interest of time. So this is the way that we can describe data. This is the shape. So we talked about shape, we talked about center, shape, and spread. And so this is the shape. So it can be uniform, where there's really not a lot of variation. It can be skewed to the right, which means the tail goes off to the right. It can be skewed to the left. And then there's bimodal, which means there's two sort of peaks in the data. It can be bimodal and skewed. And symmetrical is just that kind of like bell shape that we talk about, which is also called the normal curve. There's also ways that we describe the center of the data, which can be really important, again, for policy decisions, but for other reasons as well. So the mean is also called the average, and it's not difficult to calculate, and you probably learned how to do it in like grade 4 or something, but may have just forgotten. You add up all the values in a data set, and then you divide by the number of values that you have. And that gives you the average score. So you could say like the average height in this room is like 5'7" or whatever it is if you added up all of our heights and then divided by the number of people in the classroom. The median is also a measure of center in your data set, and that's the value that splits the data in half. So that's the midpoint of the data. And when you have a data distribution that is skewed, it's not symmetrical, it's often advisable to use the median over the mean, because with the mean, a large data point or a really small data point can pull the average to one side or the other. So in skewed data, you would use the median if you want a measure of center. And then who knows what mode is? Yeah. Yes, the most frequent value. So it's the data value that comes up the most frequently in your data set. That would be the tallest bar in a histogram. So we also talk about the spread of the data in Environment 178. So there can be tall and skinny normal curves or bell curves that are symmetrical. There can be ones that are shorter and wider. And so what are the implications of that for your data set and for how you would analyze the data? We talk about the range, which is the maximum versus the minimum or minus the minimum value. So how far your data are spread over in terms of how far your variable spreads. And then we learn about how to calculate a standard deviation, which is just a different way of measuring the spread of your data. Because if a data distribution is short or tall and skinny, it means that all the data is highly clustered around a given point, and there's not a lot of room to wiggle. Whereas if it's a much wider distribution, it just means that there's a lot more variability in your data. So that was like a really quick overview of some of the things we'll be learning about. I wanted to know if you have any questions about that before I go. Or anything else about Environment 178 or the transition. Yeah. How many professors bell curve marks? I do not know the answer to that question. I don't think it's very common, but no, I don't think it's common. Yeah.
Since you're teaching the winter course, how's the professor for the fall course?
So I think she's probably great. I've not ever taken one of her courses, but I think they're all going to be great. Yeah.
Do you see like specific patterns in ecosystems? Because in like the beginning you mentioned like there's evidence based on patterns. So is it like the data is like reoccurring in certain populations we know, perhaps by events that like happen continuously, like natural disasters, or like maybe policies like always create a definite result?
Oh, that's a great question. So the question, if I'm understanding correctly, is do like natural disasters or policy changes always create the same impact no matter where they are? And the answer to that is no, they don't. Because if you can imagine if like, not that like here we're kind of insulated or isolated from like a hurricane, right? So, but if there was like a huge storm here, our infrastructure in like southern urban Canada is such that we probably would not actually be afraid of getting cholera, right? Or like a waterborne disease because we have so much good infrastructure in Canada and because we're like living in the global north. In a poorer country with poorer infrastructure, if there's a flood, so a lot of like the small island states are being much more terribly affected by climate change and by hurricanes and by natural disasters partly because of where they are and it happens more frequently, but partly also because they just don't have the infrastructure because they're not as wealthy of countries. Similarly, and so in planning, for those of you who are going into planning, part of what you'll learn about over the next 5 years is just about how you can't take a policy, move it into another city and expect the outcome to be the same because context is so important in how people respond, in the outcomes and those kinds of things. But that's a great question. Yes?
What would an example project in stats be like?
So an example project in stats would be like, here's a data set in Excel. I want you to answer these questions for me about transit mode and demographics in these different neighborhoods. And you need to summarize the neighborhoods and the transit modes and tell me how highly correlated they are using the formula for correlation that we learned. What's the mean, median, and mode of bicycle transport in Vancouver using this data set? Like those kinds of questions. And then like maybe 7 or 8 questions, and then you hand in the Excel spreadsheet and the question answers. Yes?
Are textbooks required for every class?
So that also depends on the class. The answer is no, they're not required for every class. But if your professor says get the textbook, you probably should. Yes?
Are they on a line
Some of them are, yeah. And the professor will tell you if there's like a new textbook versus you can use the old version of this. It's different in every class. It'll also probably be on the syllabus. Am I done? Like, how much time? Okay, any more questions? Yes? If you lose your textbooks, then you can try to find them, which would be the best outcome. But it's like, if you lose them, then it's up to you to decide what to do. So often professors will put textbooks on reserve at the library. So you can only take them up for 3 hours, I think, and if it's gone, it's gone, and someone's taking it. You can't take it home. So you can go to the library to do all your readings if you want. Or you can buy new ones. Yeah. I don't think there's like insurance on textbooks. Unfortunately, because they're expensive. I know they're expensive. Any other questions? Yeah.
I've heard other classes in university, they use like those clickers for like doing multiple choice stuff. There.
Yes.
How often do you say that's used, or do you use it in classes?
So iClickers, I think, are required, right? Are they? You have to buy them? I think that they are. Do you know? Okay. So I've never used iClickers before because I don't know how. And I have never taken the 5 minutes it would take me to learn to probably like learn how to do it. I haven't. Yeah, what? Yeah.
I've had 3 classes yet.
Okay, so Devin has had 3 classes so far with iClickers in them. So I'm just not good at technology. Yep. An iClicker is like a little clicker thing that you buy from the bookstore.
It's like a remote control, but it has like A, B, C, D, and E, and those are your only buttons. And you use them to answer multiple choice questions or quizzes in class.
Yeah, and I think often professors use that information to know if you're in class or not, right? Yeah. So I think it might be, some people might use it as an attendance thing. Any other questions? Yeah. Pardon? So I would say don't buy an iClicker until your professor tells you for sure 100% need one. I don't know how expensive they are even. Like $35-ish? So, any other questions? Yes?
What would be a good note-taking technique? Because I noticed that you like transition into slides like really quickly and then pause something.
Yeah, so a good note-taking technique. I think you're going to hear more about note-taking techniques after I'm done. So for my classes, and I think for most of your classes, you would have all of these. So you would not have to write down the things you see online, the things you see on the slides. You would write down additional things that you think might be interesting. But you're going to learn more about note-taking after my lecture. Yeah?
Where and when do you receive the syllabus?
Where and when do you receive the syllabus? That's also a good question. So it depends on the class, again. When I was your age, we didn't have like online, we didn't have Learn. So we would get them on the first day of class, as a hard copy. Now, because you guys have Learn, they will be posted on Learn for all of your classes. I do not bring hard copies to my classes anymore because I post them online, and if you want to print them, you can print them, and if you don't, then you don't have to. But you should get them before the first day of class, and then I would say, I have not experienced a class ever where people don't talk about the syllabus on the first day. The syllabus is so important, you guys. If I can tell you one thing, that's like the thing that I hope you take away from this. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
When do you post your syllabus? Just so you get a general idea.
So again, it depends like how prepared I am in advance. For sure before the first day of classes, but I don't even know when Learn gets up and running before the first day of classes. Maybe I think we have to have them submitted at least a week in advance. Yeah. Yeah.
Does the syllabus have everything we need to buy for class now?
Yes, so the syllabus has everything you need to buy as well, the textbooks, required readings. If you need an iClicker, I'm sure it would be on there. And any, like, often they also have recommended readings, which are not things you need to buy if you don't want to, but it's just like, for further information, you can look here. Yes? You have access to the slides beforehand if the professor posts them beforehand. I think for the years that I've been teaching, there may have been once or twice where I wasn't quite prepared enough in time to post them beforehand, but I try to always post them at least the night before class so that you guys have them. Because also the thing that I heard earlier when Caitlin was talking was like, you can't, oh, this is the other thing that I want you to know while I have you here and you're not in a real class. So the thing about you can't listen well when you're doing something else, which we all know in our brains is true, but I want you to also be aware that, like, you guys can see me and I can also see you, which means if you're looking at your lap and smiling, I know that you're not thinking about stats. I know that you're probably like on your phone, like, oh, I just got this flirtatious message from like whoever, or like, oh, someone liked my Instagram post. I don't even have Instagram, but like, I can tell if you're smiling and I haven't said anything dumb or funny that you're not thinking about what I'm talking about. So if you're gonna, and also if you wanna like look at Facebook or do whatever cool thing you guys do online, buy like boots or whatever, like you can also do that, but just don't sit at the front then, because then everyone behind you can see that's what you're doing. So if you wanna do stuff that's not, like if you're not gonna pay attention in class, actually, you don't have to come again. So if you wanna do something else, you can either like maybe sit at the back or just don't come and do something else. But I think for most of your professors, they'll probably feel like, I can tell when you're engaged, I can tell when you're looking at me, when you're paying attention, when you nod. Those are all like my reinforcement. I can tell when people are bored, and I can tell when people are not paying attention because they're like looking interested at their phones or their computer. So that's just like a thing that you should know, we know, so we're all on the same page. That's my friendly message to you. Anything else? Okay, I'm super excited that you guys are here and that you've chosen Waterloo and this fantastic faculty. And for those of you who I'll see in the winter term, I look forward to seeing you. And come talk to me if you ever want to talk about anything. Okay.
Okay, guys, so now we're going to give you 5 minutes, and you're going to write a summary of your notes that you were just taking. So some key things to remember when you're writing the summary. You're going to translate what you just learned into your own ideas, into your own words. Use a logical form of organization because you're going to want to review that later when you're studying, hypothetically. And then in your summary, make sure you're condensing things down. So you want to identify the main points, some key examples, key terms, supporting details, and make sure you're wanting to keep it pretty short so that you don't have to go back to a really long piece of paper with lots of information that's not going to help you get to those key points quickly. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to do that now. Okay, guys, so we're going to come together for a second. So I'm going to get you guys first, before we talk more broadly, to turn to a neighbor and discuss a little bit about what you chose to put in your notes and put in your summary and why you chose those things and why you chose to leave certain things out. So I'll give you 2 minutes to do that.
I want to get a sense of whether they had enough note-taking space.
Some of them what? Yeah, I saw them doing it. I was looking. I mean, I was only looking at the front half, so. Okay, so we'll come back together. Okay. So did anyone want to share any of their insights? Maybe an interesting difference between you and your partner? No. Yes.
Pay attention to key concepts that the professor repeats, like how many times it was mentioned to read the syllabus.
Yep. Yes, right there.
I would say my subtitles when my heading is questions so that I have an answer instead of just like this is this.
Great. Sorry. Well, too loud. Okay. And so how do you think your lecture experience would have been different today if you had had the chance to look at Professor Miniker's slides ahead of time or review some of the material ahead of time? Do you think that your lecture notes would have looked different, and how so? Yes?
Well, we wouldn't really have to write as much like while we're sitting here because we would have already had it if you could have done it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there and then there. Yeah.
Read it over like beforehand, like have the questions ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the stuff that you might not understand, like pay attention to that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because as you saw, it might not always be obvious what she's going to talk about from her slides, because it might just be a bunch of graphs, and so you don't know exactly. So that's where you can pay attention. Yes. You. Exactly. So you can focus on putting in the examples and putting in some new insights that she's talking about if you've got those notes ahead of time. Is there anything else anyone wanted to share about that note-taking process? Did you guys like the Cornell method? Do you think you'll use it next year? Yes? Yes? Yeah?
If you can read an article, maybe like that could help, but at some points it seems that I write too much on the right and I barely write anything on the left, so.
So we have a comment here that he was saying that he wrote too much in the right-hand side and he didn't write much in the left. But one thing to remember is that you can go back to that left-hand side and fill out some key points or some questions, so you can use that after your class time as well. Okay, so we're going to get a few peers right now to share their notes with us. So Devin and Sam are in the Faculty of Environment. I'm sorry, I don't know what courses you're in.
I'm in 2B Geography and Environmental Management.
And I'm in 3B planning.
So planning and geography and environmental management. So Devin's slide notes, sorry, are here. So we'll just put them up for a second. How do can I, yep. Yep. Oh, how did that happen?
I muted it.
Oh, how do you unmute? Oh, there we go. Unmute. No, that's, sorry.
Well, this one's on. Is it because the thing is set up?
There we go.
Oh.
Okay. So I might.
Or I can just talk loud.
Yeah. Well, we'll do this so that you guys can hear. So maybe start with how you organized your notes and the structure and sequence and design of your notes.
So I try to go and look for kind of what our key ideas are, what kind of the key themes are. I would make that a heading, and then through there I add more of the kind of supporting data, and especially information. So like if you look at the thinking about probability and weather predictions, that's just up there a little bit. I included the points from the lectures, so that I had the main concept and then the points from the lectures, but then underneath that I then included stuff with class discussion. And I find that organizing it like this and having kind of a hierarchy of that helps me go back later and make connections and figure out how I want to organize my studying. Then I highlighted especially the case studies. Case studies are one of those things that come up a lot and are generally really good to know for exams. If it's just a general question, it can be really helpful to bring in the case study as part of your answer to prove you know what's going on. Or it might be a question about that in itself. Both of those are really common. I also tried to highlight key concepts and make sure to ask questions about things I didn't understand and add little notes to myself so I can remember. So I know that I had a lot of trouble remembering the skewed right and skewed left when I took 178. And so I made sure to include a note that I know I would understand, because really at the end of the day, most of the time, the only person who needs to understand your notes is you. So that's how I went about it.
Okay, great. So now we'll get, do I just hit this? I think, so then we have to turn this on. Sorry, I tried. Oh, so maybe that's, no, that's what I just hit. Oh, maybe I have to hit send. No, because I think we didn't put projector. I think it's on.
Okay. Why don't you just get Debbie talking about her
Okay.
experiences?
Okay, I'm gonna ask Devin a few more questions while we get that figured out. So, how and why does your way of taking notes work for you?
I have kind of two main things I'm kind of trying to keep in mind while I'm making my notes. The first one is I know how I go back. So a lot of my studying and review involves making cue cards. So I know that how I've structured my things, they're it might be the main header that's good to turn into a question, or like some of the people were mentioning earlier, if you make your headings while you're taking notes questions, that also works. So it gives me an idea of kind of question and answer and how I want to relate things if I was making like a mind map. But I also need to make sure that my notes are clearly understandable to someone else, because I take notes for accessibility services. So there's also probably one of my classmates who sees my notes and has to go through, and it has to be in some kind of logical structure.
So another question is, what do you do with your notes after class, and how or why does this help you to remember and learn the information?
So first off, after every lecture, so like all throughout the term, I go through and make cue cards of all of my things, and I do that by hand because I take notes on the computer. So it's really good to have that physical writing bit, and then I have all of those ready when I need to go and review at the end of term. I also use kind of like a mind map thing to draw connections between ideas and kind of build the network of concepts that's really important for really understanding the material beyond being able to do a good job on the exam.
And then the last question is, how have your note-taking strategies changed since your first year?
In first year, I was a die-hard handwritten notes because I'd done so much research and I was convinced that that was the only proper way to do it. But I was having anxiety attacks in class, so I recognized that that wasn't something that was working for me, and so I worked around kind of what I was able to do. So I might take notes on my computer in class, but then can go home and get the same benefits of maybe writing it out physically by making the cue cards or making the mind maps, and you get the same effects while still kind of working to your strengths.
So are we able to get the... Okay, so we're gonna get Sam to talk about her strategy.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, so I did the Cornell method as we talked about earlier in the class. So I have my key terms on the left side, and then I wrote my notes on the other side. And so what I was really looking for is kind of the key themes that she was talking about. So I was thinking about the link between, like, starting from the beginning, where why do we study data, to the use of statistics, and especially the videos, as Devin had mentioned, that I find that it's much easier to follow along in class whenever there's a video or a case study, because number one, you're not sure if you're going to be able to find it after class, and number two, it's just a lot easier to follow along with the class, because the professor will probably point out anything important about the video, and it's really a lot better to follow along with them rather than going back later and trying to be like, what was the point of Doug Ford talking? So, oh, awesome, yeah. So as you can see, yeah, so I start out with like talking about statistics, what it is, thinking about like the link between things. As you can see here, so I talk about this is the link back to data. You always want to, well, I always like to bring back what we're talking about to the main point of the lecture, because an example doesn't mean much if you can't connect it to the concepts that you're talking about in class. And I talked about the safe injection site data and thinking about, okay, what does that mean for data, looking forward, because I'm thinking, okay, if this was going to come up on a midterm, what type of question would Professor Miniker ask me? She may ask, okay, what is the use of data and safe injection sites? Then looking at spurious links, that was a key theme I thought, and something that Dr. Miniker didn't say, but if it was implied, was that correlation doesn't equal causation. So when I flip over, there's a note the fact that cheese consumption does in fact not mean anything with sheep deaths. I know some people asked about, okay, what if you can't write everything down, the professor's saying, because their slides are going too fast? Well, that's what I did here. I put a note, say, go back to it later. So after the lecture's done and I'm going through my notes, that's where I'm going to fill in that information about the types of shapes, whether it's skewed, uniform. So I know that that's not something I got all the way down and I need to come back to. And then I made sure to write down number 1, 2, 3, what are the points of describing data? I think that numbers make a lot of sense when you're trying to take your notes, because it's really orderly and it just kind of makes sense easily. And then when I did my summary, I was thinking about, okay, if I didn't look at my notes, what would I think? Okay, this is the point of data, this is the point of those videos, and try and connect everything back together, just kind of in like an easy way. Like I like to talk with my friends after the lecture, say like, hey, so-and-so, is this what this meant? Is this what it is? Even if I already know the answer, I like to confirm with other people to make sure I'm on the same page. And I guess like in terms of like note taking, to answer some of the questions, yes, Devin, like I've taken hand notes basically since first year because I think that I do buy into the whole, it does make more sense to write it out by hand, because there's a reason why you can't type as fast as you write, is because you have to take the time to process the information. But I find that your note-taking strategy will really change depending on the class. For me, I don't know, I can't take notes by computer in a stats class, because when there's a lot of formulas, a lot of numbers, then it can be really difficult to type those out and do the formulas. But if I'm in a more concept-based class where it's not really defined, this is one subject to the other, then I'll use something like mind mapping. And it's been becoming really fluid, I think, since like first year. I used to think, okay, if I'm gonna use the Cornell method, I have to use it all the time. And that's definitely not true. And I still find that even in going to fourth year next year, I still don't have like a solid note-taking technique, because I'm always learning new things, and professors are always teaching us different types of strategies to use. And I guess like after a lecture, what do I do with my notes? So typically I'll put them aside. I'll try and review them like the day after, or maybe that week. And then at the end, I'll actually use the Cornell method to make study notes for almost every subject I have. So I do it go by week, concept by concept, and I try and combine the lecture slides with my handwritten notes and think about, okay, so what? What does this matter? And also combine that with the readings. So, yeah.
That's a great segue into my next little part, but let's get a thanks for these two, and I'll ask you to stick around if we have time for other questions other than note-taking. So they're going to stick around, and if we have time, we'll ask them questions not related to note-taking. Okay. Okay. So Sam just talked briefly about making review notes. And review notes, this is a great habit to get into, making some review notes and to finding your own sort of organization of doing this, and translating ideas into your own words and condensing all that information from your readings, from your lectures, all into one sort of place so that you can review it easily. And why you should review it is this little thing called the curve of forgetting. So the curve was actually created at the University of Waterloo, and it's a scientifically proven method of reviewing your notes. So when you come to class, or sorry, before you even come to class, you're down at the bottom, you know 0% of what you're gonna know from your lecture. Hopefully you know some other stuff from reading. And then after class, you know 100% of what you know, however well you know it, however well you paid attention in class. So how much do you think you know as a percent, or how much as a percent do you think you forget by the second day, by day 2? Does anyone have any guesses? Yes.
Maybe, 50%.
50%. Anyone else? 70%? Okay, so by the second day, if you've done nothing with your notes, you haven't looked at them, you haven't thought about it, you will know you will lose 50 to 80% of what you learned in your class, which is a lot. And the reason that this happens is because as we're going through the world every day, our brain is constantly picking up pieces of information. So you hear a little bit of a conversation on the sidewalk, or you pay attention to some lyrics in a song, or you even take note of someone's cool outfit in front of you in the coffee shop. And your brain is constantly taking on all this information, but it says, I don't need to keep all this information, so it dumps it off. And it might dump some of the stuff that you learned in your lecture. So this is a really good, powerful reason to review your notes ahead of time. How much do you think you know by day 7? even less, and then by day 30, it's just 2 to 3% if you don't look at your notes. So that is roughly around the time that you're going to be getting into your midterm exams, and you might be looking at stuff like, I have never done this in my life before, and you're having to relearn it from scratch. But luckily, you can change the curve of forgetting. So if you just take 10 minutes on day 2 to review your notes, you'll get almost right back up to 100%. And then by day 7, you just need 5 minutes to review your notes to get back up to 100%. And then by day 30, just a few minutes, and you'll be back up to 100%. And that's because as you review your notes, your memory, your long-term memory is activated faster and faster each time. And your brain knows, oh, I've seen this before, I should probably hold on to it instead of dumping it off. So a lot of people in their first few years of school might think, how can I possibly make time to add in all of this review when I've got all these readings to do and classes to get to and parties to go to? But just taking a few minutes each day to review your notes will mean that you have way more time to study at the end because you won't be learning it from scratch, and then you won't be as stressed out for your exams. So the recommendation is that you take half an hour each day to review your notes, and then an hour and a half to 2 hours on the weekend to review your notes. And that'll actually save you tons of time in the end, even though it feels like a big time commitment throughout the semester. So the last thing is just a few questions to ask yourself after the lecture, and to try and think through these questions and identify the areas where you might still need to do some work. There's also one last thing which Dr. Miniker did touch on a little bit, and that is where you can get help. So in university, the expectation is on you to get help. The professor and the TAs are not going to know if you're struggling to understand something or if you're not sure about how something is marked. And at the beginning of the semester, usually it'll either be in the syllabus or it will be clarified within the first few classes kind of what the roles and responsibilities of the TAs are. So that gives you a better idea of what you should go to with them, like what kind of questions you should go to them with, And then also, generally your TAs will know a lot about the content of the class, so they're a great resource to ask questions if you don't understand something. If you are unclear about how something's going to be marked, often the TAs are marking it, so they're a good resource to ask. And then your professor is a good person to go to if you're still not understanding, if you have a personal issue that you don't feel comfortable bringing to the TA. But I would also encourage you, and Dr. Miniker also did this, to get to know your professors throughout your undergrad, because if you are going on to grad school, you'll need reference letters. So it's a good idea to visit them in office hours and get to know them and not be intimidated by them because they want to get to know you too. So the key thing in all of this to remember is that failure and challenges might occur in your first few years of university, and the expectation is that you need to learn how to be resilient and persistent and know how and when to get help. And there are many resources on campus, and hopefully you've learned about lots of them today. So does anyone have any questions for me? Yes.
How long will we interact with the professor?
Sorry?
How long will we interact with the professor, and how long will we interact with the TAs?
So that'll be really, the question is how long are you going to interact with the TAs or professors, and that's really dependent on the class. So you might have tutorials with your TAs, so you might have more interaction with them in that way. But usually the professors will have office hours, so it will be limited to a few hours a week. And so you can go, but it's a good idea to go only if you really have a reason to go, some questions, because a lot of students are trying to get into those office hours and see the professor. So you want to make sure you have a purpose when you're going to talk to them. Anyone else? Nope. So should we, okay. So does anyone have any questions for Sam or Devin who are in the undergrad here, planning and geography, about anything to do with undergrad? at the University of Waterloo. Yes?
Just a question for Sam, like, have you like done any like practice or had any level like drawing more, like, or doing more practice for that, or
What do you mean drawing?
like, or incline, like, you still need to like draw like different diagrams, but do you do like a bit of practice in a week or something?
What Lewis is asking about is about having to do hand drafting in planning courses, because we have a design course that happens in the winter term, and he's asking if you need to do any practice, and I would say no, because it's not the artistic drawing that you may be thinking you're going to be doing in terms of like wild abstract shapes. It's like with rulers and lines, and the majority of your work will end up being with CAD software, so it's like online design software. So if you're going to spend any time practicing, then I would suggest doing things like AutoCAD, Illustrator, things like that, because that's where the majority of your work is going to happen.
Great. Okay, one more question.
Are we going to have access to AutoCAD at home? Like, are we going to get a copy of the program?
Of-
We can't practice at home or get familiar with it?
Do you mean Excel? Oh, AutoCAD.
Yeah. Yes. So the school does not provide a license, like home license, for you to have on your computer, but we have a ton of computer labs here that are outfitted with a range of software. So like AutoCAD, ArcGIS, anything you could ever need, you can access for free on campus using the labs here.
Okay. Great. So we're going to take 10 minutes now, and Erin is going to introduce a little survey that we want to do.
So there will be a bunch of upper year peers circulating around at lunchtime. So if you have any more questions about what first year will be like or your program specifically, you can absolutely approach any of the volunteers who have the green shirts on. I'm just going to zoom through that. Dr. Miniker mentioned academic integrity, understanding plagiarism and cheating, and all of those great things. I mean, it's really important at university. And so we are doing a little bit of a scan of our incoming environment students to get a better understanding of your knowledge and skills related to maintaining your academic integrity. So we've put together a short survey for those of you who are interested. It is voluntary and in no way will be connected to you as a student. It's entirely anonymous. But the more honest and the more of you who can complete this, the better job we can do to support you in understanding what academic integrity will mean for you while you're at university. Okay? So we're going to give you, it should take between sort of 6 and 8 minutes to complete the survey. You should be able to access it on your smartphone. If there's anyone who does not have a smartphone, tablet, or computer with them, we can pass out iPads to you that have the survey on them. So if you're interested in that, just raise your hand and one of us will bring you an iPad. So you just put this bit.ly link into your web browser and it should take you right to the survey. If anyone has issues with it, let me know. Okay. It sounds like most of you are finishing up. If you haven't quite finished, you can just keep working at that. We're going to introduce the next speaker in a minute. The other thing I wanted to point out is if you have any questions about academic integrity or anything that was on that survey, maybe raise some questions or things that you weren't really aware of while you were taking it, that you want to discuss or chat more about, both Caitlin and I will be around at lunch as well, and we're happy to chat more about that with you, should you have any questions. So we're going to bring down the orientation advisors, and they're going to do a little session for you now.
You want this?
I don't need it.
No? Okay.
Okay, so you do have to hold on. Sorry,
Okay.
You can have it.
Woo. Oh, haha, it works.
Hi everybody, how you guys all doing? I don't need the mic, but
I do need the mic.
so there's one last thing. Pardon? Okay. So this is for the camera. Understand now. Okay, so there's one last thing to do before you guys get to lunch. I'm sorry, but we actually here representing environment orientation. So we are part of the team that helps design and schedule your orientation. I am Dee Dee. I'm in urban planning.
I'm Leah. I'm in ERS.
I'm Ray. I'm in honors planning.
And so we are part of your 2018 orientation team. So if you guys signed up for orientation, you will see us around.
Okay. So now we're going to talk a bit about some of the stuff you'll see in orientation. We've been working very hard at it, and it's super exciting, especially our Friday night programming. Just a little plug there. So we'll do I guess to the beginning of the faculty programming, we'll do a bit of an environment how-tos where you'll get to hear from a lot of your peers and leaders, learning about their programs, their experiences. If you're in co-op, you'll learn a bit about that co-op process. If you're in INDEV, you might talk about the process leading up to placement. KI does what KI does. KI has a very different program this year. It's really exciting from what I've heard. The profs are working very hard to make it really engaging for you all. And then our Wednesday programming, we'll be going off to Waterloo Park, and we're going to learn a lot about faculty traditions, spirit, faculty pride, learning what it means to be an environment student. We're going to do a lot of team bonding activities. And then there's Friday. How should I describe Friday without spoilers?
Super exciting, and it's the best programming that we've done.
If we have any fans of The Amazing Race here, we're going to be theming around that. It's not your average Amazing Race. I'm going to throw that out there. You'll realize how funny that is later. It's a great pun, just no one knows why yet. And then we'll also learn a bit about each other's programming and some of the scavenger hunt clues, which will take you around the buildings. And we highly recommend you come to that because it's easily our best programming of the week.
So I'm going to talk about a little bit about signing up for orientation. Just a show of hands, who has already signed up for orientation?
Love it.
Awesome. So for those of you who haven't signed up to orientation already, download the Portal app. It's on the App Store, on the Google Play Store.
You would have needed to
Well, you have need, right. So once you have the Portal app, just open the orientation widget. If you can't find it, there are I think there's a menu button option where you can find all the widgets. Just go to there, and you'll have access to the schedule and also any other information about orientation.
Okay, so in extension to what Ray said, during orientation week, your widget will actually show you the different programmings and your schedule for where it will be, what time the programming is at. So it not only show our orientation as environment students, but it'll also show you programming led by FEDS or SSO that is outside of the faculty programming. So just for a little kind of sneak peek, you'll see a lot of bananas during orientation week. A lot of bananas. As you can kind of see, some of us are already donning some bananas because the mascot for environment is the banana. You'll learn this story if you go to orientation week. It's a good story. But just know that our mascot is the banana. Saying that, we have some few cheers we'd like to share with you to get you hyped up first before lunch and so you're ready for orientation week when it comes. So, like I said, our mascot is the banana. So, we have to unite the bananas of the world with our first cheer. Okay, so can I get some of the ambassadors down to help this cheer, please? Yes? Everybody? Come on, I need more than that. I know all of you have done this. I know all of you have done this. Come down, please. Yeah. Okay. So our first action is you bananas of the world unite. So you make your banana peel with your hands. Yes. Yep, everyone has to make their banana peel. So when I say bananas of the world unite, you make your banana. The first step is this beat is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A-S. So there's actions to go with it. He goes, this beat is, I can't do it because I'm holding the mic, is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A, huh. Right after that is... Mm-hmm. Then you go, this place is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A, huh. So this goes, this beat is bananas, this place is bananas. It's because we are bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A, huh. Do you guys all get that? You guys got that? So we go, bananas of the world, unite. This beat is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A, huh. This place is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A, huh. Because we are bananas. I heard a lot of the people around go, but not so much in the center. Is not quite into environment spirit yet? Is it just because we're before lunch and you're really hungry? Understandable, understandable. Yeah, okay, we'll try to make this next part quicker. So right after this one, we have another traditional environment cheer. As demonstrated by Leah's hat over here, ENVS, you can't spell best without ES, which is environment studies. It's true. So it's just as I said, it's really simple. It's ENVS. You can't spell best without ES, and that's just a cheer. And we do that 3 times? Yeah, and then, yeah. And then it goes ENVS, you can't spell best without ES. ES, tell your mama. ES, tell your mama. And we do this 3 times, getting louder 2 times, and get louder every time we do it. So we go, ENVS, you can't spell best without ES. ES, tell your mama. ES, tell your mama. ENVS, you can't spell best without ES. ES, tell your mama. ES, tell your mama. You guys better be learning these because there will be a lot of cheering during orientation week. You might not lose your voice, but some of us definitely will. Not me, but some of us. What? So these 2 usually go hand in hand. So what we like is for all of you to stand up. Yeah, I don't groan at me, I know. It's true. The faster we get through this, the faster you get lunch. So the first one is Bananas of the World Unite, and then we transfer directly into ENVS. You guys all ready? Bananas of the world unite! This beat is bananas! B-A-N-A-N-A, huh? This place is bananas! B-A-N-A-N-A, huh? 'Cause we are bananas! B-A-N-A-N-A, huh? E-N-V-S, you can't go back without E-S, E-S, tell your mama, E-S, tell your mama, E-N-V-S, you can't go back without E-S, E-S, tell your mama, E-S, tell your mama. Like I said, I didn't hear much from the center, a lot from the sides, but not so much from the center.
I couldn't see a single mouth moving on the back row. The back 4.
He's calling you out. He's calling you out right now. So we're going to do it one last time. If it's loud enough, you guys can go to lunch. If. This is me, yeah. I'm saying that right now. And I'll even scream louder if that helps. Bananas of the world, unite! This beat is bananas! B-A-N-A-N-A, huh? This place is bananas! B-A-N-A-N-A, huh? 'Cause we are bananas! B-A-N-A-N-A, huh? E-N-V-S, you can't go back without E-S, E-S, tell your mama, E-S, tell your mama, E-N-V-S, you can't go back without E-S, E-S, tell your mama, E-S, tell your mama. That's a lot better. Thank you, guys. Yep. I hope to see you guys all in September, please.